Released from an Oklahoma state prison after serving 4 years for a manslaughter conviction, Tom Joad makes his way back to his family farm in Oklahoma. Homicide. That's a big word. Means I killed a guy. 7 years. I'm sprung in 4 for keeping my nose clean. He meets Jim Casey, a former preacher who has given up his calling out of belief that all life is holy, even the parts that are typically thought to be sinful, and that sacredness consists simply in endeavoring to be an equal among the people. I was a preacher. Just Jim Casey now. Ain't got the call no more. Got a lot of simple ideas, but they just seem kind of sensible. Jim accompanies Tom to his home, only to find it and all the surrounding farms deserted. Muley Graves, an old neighbor, wanders by and tells the men that everyone has been tractored off the land. Most families, he says, including his own, have headed to California to look for work. My wife and kids and her brother all took 'em and went to California. There wasn't nothing to eat. They wasn't as mad as me, so they went. The next morning, Tom and Jim set out for Uncle John's, where Muley assures that they will find the Joad clan. Upon arrival, Tom finds Mom and Pa Joad packing up the family's few possessions. Having seen handbills advertising fruit-picking jobs in California, they envision the trip to California as their hope of getting their lives back on track. Tommy, I gotta ask you, you ain't mad? Mad, Ma? You ain't poison mad? You don't hate nobody? They didn't do nothing in that jail to write you out with crazy mad? No, I was for a little while, but I ain't proud like some fellas. I let stuff run off me. The journey to California in a rickety used truck is long and arduous. Grandpa Joad, a feisty old man who complains bitterly that he does not want to leave his land, dies on the road shortly after the family's departure. Grandpa seemed to be struggling. All his muscles twitched, and suddenly he jarred as though under a heavy blow. He lay still and his breath was stopped. Casey looked down at the old man's face and saw that it was turning a blackish purple. On the crowded Highway 66, the Joads meet Ivy and Sari Wilson, a couple plagued with car trouble, and invite them to travel with the family. Sari Wilson is sick and near the California border becomes unable to continue the journey. Wilson. Ivy Wilson. We're the Joads. We come from right near Sallisaw. I knowed you wasn't Oklahoma folks. You talk queer kind. There ain't no blame, you understand? Everybody says words differently. As the Joads near California, they hear ominous rumors of a depleted job market. One migrant tells Pa that 20,000 people show up for every 800 jobs and that his own children have starved to death. Although the Joads press on, their first days in California prove tragic as Grandma Joad dies. The remaining family members move from one squalid camp to the next, looking in vain for work, struggling to find food, and trying desperately to hold on to their family. On the back of the truck, Ma lay on the mattress beside Grandma, and she could not see with her eyes, but she could feel the struggling body and the struggling heart, and the sobbing breath was in her ear. And Ma said over and over, "All right. It's going to be all right." Noah, the oldest of the Joad children, soon abandons the family, as does Connie, a young dreamer who is married to Tom's pregnant sister, Rose of Sharon. Where's Connie? I ain't seen Connie for a long time. Where'd he go? I ain't feeling so good. Connie shouldn't have left me. The Joads meet with much hostility in California. The camps are overcrowded and full of starving migrants who are often nasty to each other. The locals are fearful and angry at the flood of newcomers, whom they derisively label Okies. Living in a ramshackle camp known as Hooverville, work is almost impossible to find or pays such a meager wage that a family's full day of work cannot buy a decent meal. Tom and several men get into a heated argument with the deputy sheriff over whether workers should organize into a union. Jim Casey then knocks the sheriff unconscious and is arrested. Police officers arrive and announce their intention to burn Hooverville to the ground. I saw it. The deputy sitting on the ground raised his gun again, and then suddenly, from the group of men, the Reverend Casey stepped in. He kicked the deputy in the neck and then stood back as the heavy man crumpled into unconsciousness. A government-run camp proves much more hospitable to the Jodes, and the family soon finds many friends and a bit of work. However, one day, while working at a pipe-laying job, Tom learns that the policemen are planning to stage a riot in the camp, which will allow them to shut down the facilities. But alerting and organizing the men in the camp, Tom helps defuse the anger. Still, as pleasant as life is in the government camp, the Jodes cannot survive without steady work, and they have to move on. They find employment picking fruit, but soon learn that they are earning a decent wage only because they have been hired to break a workers' strike. After being released from jail, Jim Casey has made many enemies, and the police come and hunt him down and kill him in Tom's presence. Tom retaliates and kills a police officer. Tom goes into hiding while the family moves into a boxcar on a cotton farm. Tom heads off to fulfill Jim's task of organizing the migrant workers. The end of the cotton season means the end of work, and word sweeps across the land that there are no jobs to be had for 3 months. Rain set in and flooded the land. Rose of Sharon gives birth to a stillborn child, and the book ends with Rose of Sharon nursing a sick man back to health.